What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Who's Reality Cooking podcast. I'm here this week with Kolby from season 13 of MasterChef. How are you, Kolby? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm just having the best time, just living life after TV.
Now, I can see your hat, anybody watching on YouTube. So, what is your hat, your logo?
Yeah, it just says highly flavored. It's just kind of, I have a friend who has a highly favored art production. And so we
Nice.
kind of collaborated to make highly flavored because it's kind of a play on highly favored, but also flavored because of my cooking. So yeah,
I
and we
love
got my
it.
little chef hat up there. I have that on my website. So that's just kind of, we just kind of melded it all together.
I love it. Well, what I really want to do with this episode, you are one of the most loved contestants, as I have found. And not just, from the people watching, but I've interviewed so many people from your season and everyone just loves you. And so I
Really?
just want to, yes,
I mean, I'm
yes,
not
Lizzie.
surprised. I'm not surprised because I loved everyone on the show too. It's just so it's just nice to hear because we really did have a great bond, and I think about them often, and I'm still friends with all of them, really.
I
So
love
that's nice.
that. I love that. I just want to kind of give the listeners and the watchers of the podcast a little bit more, kind of share what was going on with you and your feelings about everything and just kind of give them a little backstage pass with Colby. So,
Yeah, I like
uh,
that.
what I first wanted to ask is what were you doing before the show?
So my history is just super funny, I guess, because I went to college to be a biologist, and then I graduated there and I said, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. And so I was like, I told my parents, I'm moving to New York. I just want to go to New York. I don't have any responsibilities here. I just graduated college. Why not? And my mom was like, you can move to New York if you try to get a job first. And if you can't get a job, then you go to New York. And I was like, okay. So lo and behold, I find a job almost instantly in just regular, like just a technology job. And it was okay, but I didn't love it. I always have loved cooking. And so I started cooking on TikTok during COVID, just like most people. And it just kind of took off from there. And then it went over to Instagram. And then I started a YouTube channel, and everything just kind of started progressing in the way that I wanted to in the food and culinary direction. So I went out on the limb again. Instead of going to New York, I just quit my job and started full-time content creation. And it just happened to work out for me. And that's kind of how I got introduced to MasterChef, because I had a lot of friends saying, Kobe, you should really look into MasterChef, or you should do Chopped, or these different shows. And then MasterChef kind of happened, and I just went with it, and I told myself I'm going to just be authentically me and see how far it gets me. So
I
yeah,
love
that's what I was
that.
doing.
Now, did they reach out to you or did you reach out to MasterChef to apply?
Well, I got a DM about it. Or no, it was either a DM or an email. I can't remember at this point, but they were just like, "Hey, you should really audition." And I was like, "Okay, it's different." For me, it was like I don't really know how to even apply for this. But when they sent me like a link, they were like, "Hey, Kobe, we think that you, with your content, you'd be great on the show, so you should just like apply and audition." And so I did, and yeah, it was a crazy process. They had us do so much just to audition, just to get to LA. And then when we got to LA, we still had to audition. So it was crazy.
Yeah, and I've talked to so many people about the different psychological exams and so many
Yeah.
interviews with producers. How long
Yeah.
was that whole process for you?
For me, I believe it was months. I want to say I got my first email in August, and then I didn't hear anything back. And then around end of September, that's when they were like, okay, we need you to do all of this. And I got all that sent in by like October, and then I didn't hear anything. They were still kind of keeping in touch every now and then, just like doing like, okay, well, we did all of that. Then weeks later, they'll be like, okay, well, now you have to do a psychological evaluation. After you have to do all these videos in your house, like cooking, how to do like, I guess they want to make sure you really know how to cook at least, and know how to be personable and talk on camera at the same time. So they had us make like a steak that was medium. They had us do like a salmon. They made us make a hollandaise sauce from scratch. They made us show them around our house and stuff like that. I sent in like 12 videos, and then maybe weeks later they were like, okay, now we want you to do a psychological evaluation and go get a physical exam and all this. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm getting pretty far here. And then like a week before you have to leave, they tell you, okay, you're coming to LA. And so it took It took months. It took months overall, but I want to say that they definitely kept you in. Maybe I mean there were weeks that would go by, but they would keep you in the loop as to how far you're going along in the application process.
That's nice. So you're not just wondering and making
Right.
other plans for other
Right.
shows.
But then they do tell you like, hey, you're gonna be out here possibly for 3 months, and they don't tell you that you're coming until I don't know why they do that, but they like kind of almost immediately will call you and be like, hey, can you get on a flight to LA next week? And I'm like, okay, I guess. Luckily, I
Well,
didn't have anything. I didn't have like a job. I was working for myself,
yeah.
so
I've spoken to a few, people with, young children, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not asking Sarah how
yeah,
that worked outside of, like how do you just drop everything and run? I
yeah.
wonder if it was like that for everyone or not. So I'll definitely
Yeah,
have to
I
ask a
know.
few of
Me and Sarah are super close, so we've shared our experiences pretty often with each other. So I know it was pretty difficult for her, but her family was super supportive. I mean, her husband came out during the auditions, and she wanted her son. I think that was really hard on her though too, because she hadn't seen her son in so long. But because they wouldn't let him come because he was underage to be on set, and so it was really hard for her. But I think she managed it pretty well.
Yeah, she seemed to have, and I know she had some other things going on, and I want to deep dive into maybe other things that
Oh,
were
you
going on
paused a
with
little
you.
bit. I can't.
And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of jump ahead. So I know there was a lot of missing content from her because she was going through a you guys are just have to listen to that episode, I suppose. But for you, there were
Yeah.
so many episodes, and I'm like, Colby, where are you? Like you were there, and I could see you, but I had no idea what you were
No.
cooking for the state fair, for the Apple Mystery Box
Yeah.
challenges, and I'm like, what? So, can
And
you
my
share with us?
recipes were so good.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, yeah, share with us what your recipes were for those, and was there a reason why you weren't on camera so much, or was it just kind of the luck of the draw?
I think that there were so many of us. It was just it's hard to get all 20 people into a 1 hour episode, especially when they want to highlight the people who were in the top and in the bottom. If you watch the show, you can kind of tell who's going to be in the top and the bottom by who they're really showing in the cooking phase of it. But I don't know why I wasn't shown more. I mean, like I said, I think it was just so many people they couldn't get us all in there. But for the state fair challenge, I was so excited about it because I'm in Texas, I'm in Houston specifically, and I kind of went down the route of the rodeo and how Houston is just such a Tex-Mex inspired place. So I did my take on a carne asada fry, and it was kind of they wanted to emphasize how we elevate. Keep make sure you're elevating. Make sure you're elevating. So for my carne asada fry, I did instead of fries, I made a potato puree with a New York strip steak. I made my own pico de gallo with the avocado crema, and then I topped it all off with just some microgreens, and it was so cool looking. I was so proud of myself because my first plating was so good, and I was like, "This is gonna be great." And I did actually post it for all the recipes they didn't show of mine. I posted it on my Instagram. So if you want to see it, you can go look at my Instagram or my website for that.
Awesome. And we will definitely, for anyone listening in the car, don't worry,
Oh, I
we will
think,
make sure to put Colby's Instagram in the show notes. But why don't you give a quick shout out to that way if somebody's, just like not doing their work at work and listening and wants to check him out, tell us what your Instagram
yeah.
handle is.
Um, yeah, you can check me out on Instagram and TikTok at Chef Kolby Kash, and Kolby Kash is with K's. So, yeah. So,
Awesome.
yeah, Chef
Um,
Kolby
a-
Kash.
and like we said, we will definitely put that in the show notes so it'll be easy for anyone to find. Then they finally showed your dish on Birds of a Feather challenge. And can you share what you made for that one?
Yeah, so for the Birds of a Feather challenge, I made a jerk chicken with a green sauce and rice and peas with it was kind of like a pineapple salsa kind of salad type of thing that was on top. And I mean, it was really good too. And also, I wanted to mention for the apple challenge, I made an apple bread pudding that was amazing. And because we had to do sweet because I know that I believe it was Kyle, he won the state fair challenge, so he had to choose who was making sweet, who was making savory, and we made sweet. So I made an apple bread pudding. which is also on my website and on my Instagram. 'Cause it was
Nice.
really good.
Yeah. Everyone check that out. It's oh my gosh, I love apples. So, and I know we're jumping around a little bit, and that's just kind of
I
how it
know,
works with
sorry.
this. Oh, it's great. I think people kind of want to hear the conversation, so I think
Mhm.
it's great. But were you happy that you got sweet, or were you planning on savory and then had to kind of reevaluate?
I think with the apples, I was happy that I got sweet, because it's just easier to make a sweet dish whenever you're using apples, I think. But also, it is kind of scary because baking is so precise sometimes, and so when we do baking challenges in the show, it's a little bit scary because you it's a lot of like precision, but you also have to hope that it comes out right because you don't really have time to redo it most times. So I was pretty happy, but also terrified. But that's just kind of the theme for the whole time I was there.
I bet. I bet. What was that like for you? Like, did each person have their own producer asking questions? Or if you're not allowed to answer that, I understand. Were there like cameras above and like surrounding you? What was that
Yeah.
piece like?
Um, there were cameras everywhere, but mostly they were to the right of us, which they call the fourth wall, but there were cameras above us too. So they were, and then they would run over to us with a camera crew and kind of talk to us while we're cooking. And I say that the talking was a part of the challenge as well, just like being able to talk and cook at the same time because you're being filmed all the time. You're being interviewed all the time. If it's not by a producer, it's by one of the judges or all of the judges at one point come and talk to you while you're cooking. Because I guess they just they don't know how it's going to turn out. So they don't want to not interview someone who actually does make a good dish or the worst dish. And as far as producers go, yes, you usually do have the same producer that asks you questions in your interviews. I remember I started off with one producer and then they switched me over to another and I had him for the rest of the time that I was there. And I think that they kind of do that because they know which producer will be better for which personality.
Yeah.
That's what I'm assuming because they're really good at everything. I mean, the producing is just so amazing how they chose the people that were going to be on the show and how our personalities would either clash or mesh. So I think that they're really genius with all of that.
Oh, and I have to agree. And for me, it's been so interesting watching just the evolution of these shows. And the one I was on, like I said, it was 10 years ago. And then to see how you guys are just treated so well and so revered for your work in comparison to how we
Right.
were treated.
'Cause I mean,
You're like,
we were treated well, but there were times where you're just like, oh my gosh, I want to get out of here. But
yeah.
overall, I would say that it was a great experience, and there were a lot of people who did have our best interests at heart.
I'm so happy to hear that. And if you want to share any of the bad stuff, of course, that's,
The bad
it's your
stuff is the
hour.
little stuff like the food would be cold sometimes, or like we would just the sleep, we wouldn't get too much, or they would be like tell us to wake up early, but then maybe we would just be waiting around for hours and not really. But those are things that I can kind of understand too because we can't be late. There are some people in the behind the scenes that maybe can be late because they can start filming without them, or like the food is probably cold because there are 20 of us. There's hard to feed so many people. So it's just little stuff like that that I kind of can understand, but it was difficult. But also when less people were there, they started being able to accommodate more.
That's interesting to hear. And just kind of going back to the Apple challenge and how you weren't on camera so much, I kind of thought, all right, well, it makes more sense knowing that you did something sweet and then you killed it. You were so
Uh-huh.
amazing in the cake challenge, and that was with apples. So that kind of
Mhm.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Can you share about a little bit more about the United Cakes of America challenge and if you practiced ahead of time and if so, what you worked on? Because that cake I have goosebumps right now.
Thank
It's
you, thank
amazing.
you. So I knew even but when I started the application process, I knew that baking wasn't necessarily. I mean, I can bake. It's just that I can do it in my time frame. So I was kind of practicing at home how to bake within the time frame, what I can and cannot do within an hour and things like that. Because it's like I love making cinnamon rolls, but I can't make a cinnamon roll in an hour. Or I love doing different types of things, and you just have to remember like, okay, you only have a certain amount of time. So I did practice a lot when I was at home. And then the overall, when we saw those cakes, I think everybody's heart dropped because we walked in and there was like a cake there, but we were just thinking they were celebrating the 250th episode. So we were like, okay, well, they're celebrating the 250th episode. What are we doing today? And so when we and then we knew that I knew that we all knew that Kennedy had the what's the word, the advantage that week. So I was like, oh my gosh, Kennedy's in the West, you know, she's gonna help the West out mostly, but me and Kennedy were really close off camera. So I was like, maybe she'll like throw me a bone or something. But you know, she was very fair about it, I think. And so the cake thing I was very nervous about because you see these big cakes and you're like, there's no way I can do this in the amount of time that they're giving us. And then Kennedy gives me the apple stack cake. And I do think that she gave the South some of the hardest cakes because we were dominating kind of in the competition at that point. We were doing really well. And it was, I guess she was like trying to, and I would too, go after one of the more, I guess, better regions. And so then I got the apple stack cake and I was a little nervous about it because there was nothing to hide how it looked on the inside. So you had to be very meticulous about what you were doing and how you kind of put it all together. So I pretty much started by making my cake batter and getting my cakes in the oven, which was a challenge in its own because I want to say it was like 7 layers of cake in an oven and cooked all in an hour and 30 minutes and decorated is off the charts difficult. And so you have to get the cake in the oven immediately. And you'll have Gordon yelling, if those cakes aren't in the oven, you're not going to finish. You're looking around like whose cake's in the oven and nobody's will be in the oven. So that kind of gave you a sense of relief. But I got mine in there pretty fast. I was really fast at everything that I did in that competition because I was just so afraid that I wouldn't get things done. But then you have to peel and core like 12 apples
That's
and
crazy.
cut those up to make them all pretty much the same so they cook evenly. And then you can't cook them too much because you don't want the cake collapsing on itself. You want it to have some structure. So that was difficult, but it all came together.
It was such a beautiful cake. And how
Thank
many
you.
levels or how many layers did you say
I
it
want to
was?
say it was 7 layers. It was either 6 or 7 layers. It was a lot because I remember balancing like all these cake pans in my hands, trying to make sure I get an equal amount in each, which was also a challenge because I don't know how I did it. I think I did it basically like I weighed it and then I would put the same amount of weight in each
Art.
part in each baking pan. So yeah, it was difficult.
And then how did you fit them all in the oven? Did you have to like stack them on each
um
other?
so I did. I put 3 at the top. No, I put 4 at the top and I kind of made it work and then I put 3 at the bottom and I had to kind of put it where there was 2 at the bottom and then 1 straddling the 2 at the bottom. It was crazy.
So, see, I wish they had shown all of that because as I mentioned before we jumped on, I interviewed Wayne last week
Yeah, I
and
bet
he
it
had
was
like
crazy.
9 layers. I'm like,
Yeah,
how
his was crazy, and I commend him on making that cake because I think the hardest part is getting the cakes cooked and done and fitted in the oven, and then once that part is done, you can kind of relax a little bit, kind of, because some people really had a big task ahead of them even after the cakes were in the oven. Like I had to peel and core 12 apples, cook them down. Some people had to make their frosting. Some people had to make like chocolate ganache. So yeah, I'm sure his was really difficult.
Yeah, I wish they had shown because I know they showed Lizzie's in the oven. They didn't show yours. They didn't show Wayne's. I'm like, what a missed opportunity. They should have gotten the camera in there when you guys are putting them in or taking them
I
out.
can't imagine what Wayne's looked like, but I think they showed Lizzie's because her cakes were like above the thing and she had to like work around it and fix it, but she did a great job.
She did do a great job, and she has some really fun stories about that too. We had I think she might have been my first interview from your season. She's
We love
great.
Lizzie over here. I love her.
She's a sweetheart, and she had so many great things to say about you in the tag team challenge. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about the Dodger Stadium episode where you guys get to
Yeah.
go in and you're literally on the grass. What was that like?
It's kind of surreal because Gordon kind of gives us a hint off camera about what the next challenge is going to be,
Uh-huh.
and he'll say something super cryptic, and so the night at night we're all like thinking about it and I'm trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying to figure it out. So he gives us kind of a hint, but nobody had any idea what he was talking about. And so we pull up in the bus and Wayne, of course, kind of knows already because he is like a baseball guy. And he's like, "We're going to Dodger Stadium." And I'm like, "Oh my God, no way we're going to Dodger Stadium. No way we're cooking for the Dodgers." I'm kind of losing my mind here because I'm an Astros fan also. So I want to let them know, like, and I had on it's crazy because I think I had on an Astros hat or something that day. And I was
Awesome.
just not hearing the end of it because everybody in there is looking at us like, looking at me like, "Oh my God, I'm not an Astros fan in Dodger Stadium." And I also we walk in, and I mean it's insane because you start to realize we're cooking on the field. Like we're not cooking in a I'm thinking we're gonna end up going into the back cooking where the concessions are or something like that. We are
Yeah.
cooking on the field in the middle of Dodger Stadium. And then I have the advantage. So I'm thinking, what could my advantage be? I have no idea. And one part they didn't show on camera was Gordon kind of yelled over to me. He was like, "Oh, so what do you think about Dodger Stadium?" I was like, "Well, it's not Minute Maid." And and then the guy, I forget I'm not a big baseball fan, but I forget the guy's name that was kind of the guest Dodger
Yeah.
player. And he just kind of was like shaking his head, and I was like, "I got him." But then they Gordon calls me over, and I find out that my advantage is that I get to switch a player from one team to another, which I was so upset about that advantage because it was more of like a TV thing. It was more of like a kind of messy, is what I told one of the main producers when we were off camera. I was like, "Y'all really didn't give me an advantage. Y'all just did something to make things messy along the way. Like now I have to trade somebody and kind of hurt their feelings and move them and bring somebody over to my team." And I didn't really like that. That was the first time that I actually was like a little overwhelmed in the competition because I was friends with everyone and I didn't want who ended up being Bryn. I didn't want her to feel bad, but the reason I chose Bryn was because I wanted to keep the South together because we had been doing so well. And then I chose Bryn because she was the captain on the first team challenge and they didn't do so well, but I didn't put that as her fault, but I do remember Nina, she like did something where she was making coleslaw. And I figured we were gonna have to make some kind of coleslaw or something. So I wanted her on my team. So I kept Nina, switched Brent out for Kennedy because Kennedy had been doing pretty well in the competition. And me and her were pretty close off camera. So I chose Kennedy
Nice.
and I felt so bad about having to kick Brent off my team because I actually really love Brent, but yeah, that's how the cookie crumbled.
Yeah, it's almost as, and this is not a jab at at the producers, but it's almost as if they were trying to create some drama in that scene. And it's good for
Yeah.
TV, but
And I
like you
mean,
said, it wasn't really an advantage.
it wasn't an advantage. I told him I was like the advantage would have been actually I don't know if I can say this, but never mind.
Okay.
But there was an advantage I could have had, but I don't think that they show that on the show because of how I wish I could say, but I don't know if I can.
No, I get it. And anyone listening, Colby really has to protect himself. He had to sign contracts to go on the show. And Colby, I don't want you to say it if you're even a little bit nervous. But you can tell me later when we're not
Okay,
recording if
okay,
you
okay.
want. We can gab about it. But I really want to protect Colby as well. So let's
Sorry, guys.
sorry guys. But how about this? We'll still make it fun for them and we'll play epic or sacrilegious. Gordon throwing food on the Dodgers stadium grass. Is that just epic and only Gordon could pull that thing? Or was it like, dude, that's wrong?
I think that it's just epic Gordon, like people want that Gordon. People want the Gordon that is, intense and throwing food because it's not exactly how he would make it and stuff like that. So I'm not mad at it. And I mean, when you're in it, honestly, it's like a blur to me because I don't even see him doing those things because I'm worried about making sure we get food out and I'm worried about making sure that the food is good, especially because I wasn't the captain. So I wasn't up there with him while he was doing it. And I think he threw a burger, which wasn't even my team. So I didn't even get to see any of that.
Yeah. Well, for
But it's
anybody
totally
wondering,
epic, Gordon.
I think it's epic too. And I've been asking everyone who was in this episode that, and everyone says epic, and I totally agree. It's like if he didn't, that would have been another missed opportunity for production.
Exactly.
So,
I love when Gordon is kind of intense because he just means it in the best way. He's a chef, and I always kind of equate it to like how in sports, you know, your coach is hard on you, but he wants to win. He wants us to do our best. So that's kind of how I equate Gordon to it. I don't really take it personal.
That's so good to hear. And then in the next challenge was the military rations, which I found so interesting, having been a military kid myself. And you were in the top three. You were just killing it. Can you explain what you made and how that all came together for you?
Yeah, so actually, I was having a breakdown at this point because we had lost in the challenge before. So we had a disadvantage coming into that challenge where we were able to choose, where we had to choose our proteins second. And you can even see in the episode when it was time for us to go choose our protein, I run into the pantry first, but I go the wrong way. So everybody gets to choose their protein, and I'm stuck with ground beef. I mean, no, it was ground pork. And I was just like so upset about that because I just was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with ground pork that I can make manageable or just even elevate it. But then I thought to myself, I was like, well, look, Joe is a judge. I'm going with meatballs. If anything else, if I pull it off, he's going to be impressed and it could land me at least safe. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to do it. I was really having a hard time with it, especially because I was like, damn, like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't, and I'm already stressed because it's been weeks at this point. We've been there filming for just however long, and you're missing your family, and you're in a hotel. It's just a lot at this point. So I'm upset, and I'm just like on the brink of just like. So it ended up being kind of like one of those moments that reinvigorated me because I'm making the meatballs. Joe is coming up to me. He's talking about how excited he is about it. I use 5 rations to make the tomato sauce, and I use the crackers from the rations to kind of bind the meatballs, and I end up making like an arugula salad with peanuts from the ration. So it actually came together really nice, and I have practiced this plating multiple times because I make these fried mac and cheese balls and boudin balls, and I kind of plate them the same way. I put the sauce at the bottom, put 3 there, and then I put something on top to make it kind of look good. So I had practiced the plating already, and then I didn't even realize it. So I put it all together. Time goes by. I'm really excited about my dish. If nothing else, I'm like, look, I know I'm safe, if not in the top. And I end up being in the top. And I mean, going up against Grant's dish that looked so good that episode, I was like, dang, I don't know if I'm gonna be in the top for this one. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna win this one, but being in the top was good enough for me at that point because I was already so upset about just getting the ground pork, and I needed that little bit of a boost because I was just kind of in that place where you're on reality TV and you're there for weeks and you're ready to just either win or go home. And
Yeah.
it was getting bad, but I think everybody went through that phase at least once.
Yeah. And would you describe it as just kind of fatigue from working so much and from being on for so
Oh
long?
yeah. I mean, it was definitely fatigue. You wake up 6 in the morning. You're filming until 8 at night because they don't tell people how we're doing interviews for hours. And there are so many of us having to do interviews, and they don't want to, I guess, give anybody any special treatment. So we all have to wait for all the interviews to be done. And so it's just tiring. And then you're everything that you're doing is pretty much being controlled because they have to protect the integrity of the show and just making, because there are people that can possibly see us and be like, oh, that's the cast of MasterChef. That person's gone. So this is going to be the top 10. This is going to be the top 5. So they
Yeah.
kind of have to protect that. And, you know, it's no fault of theirs. It's just that it does get tiresome having to be controlled so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that that reinvigorated you because
Definitely
in the
did.
next episode, you went into the tag team, and it seemed like you and Lizzie were probably in my opinion, and maybe I'm a little biased because I really like Lizzie and I've already interviewed her. But it seemed like you guys just worked so well together and you guys were almost like reading each other's mind. Can you explain what that was like working with her, and are you guys still friends?
Yeah. Lizzie and I don't know what happened. It was almost like we just clicked. And I don't know, it's so hard to explain because we were so good. Like, we just knew when to take a back seat to the other person and we knew when to step up. And it's like she knew she knew what to tell me to help me, and I knew what to tell her to help her. And we just clicked. I think even when I want to say it was Grant, Grant was putting the teams together. And when he gave me Lizzie, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Me and Lizzie have been getting along. Like, this is, I immediately thought that, but I thought that about everyone. So I was like, it doesn't matter who I'm with. I think I'm going to be good. But he gave me Lizzie, and it was so funny because we're like so opposite. I'm so tall and she's so little. And we were just standing next to each other. And I was like, this is going to be so much fun. And so it was, I started off because we knew that whoever started, the other person was going to finish. And I wanted Lizzie to have the opportunity to play because she just has like a finesse about her that I was like, she'll be able to do this in a crunch. And so I started off with making the pasta. And you want to make the pasta and the cake batter first. So I started off making the pasta because I was more familiar with that. And she started off making the cake batter because she was more familiar with that. And we just went back and forth. We knew exactly what to start on because as soon as I was about to finish, I'd say, Lizzie, this is where you jump in. This is where you start. She starts there. Then I kind of guide her because when you're watching, you don't realize you can see stuff that the person that's cooking can't see because you're focused in on everything. So you just have to be the coach on the sideline. And she just kind of went with whatever I said. And then I did the same thing. She would just be like, Kolby, don't forget this. Don't forget that. You're looking at this. And it just worked out so perfectly. And Lizzie is just the best. When it ended, we just kind of like started, we just had the best time. We laughed and we like hugged, and you could see the cameraman like shaking his head like, y'all had the best time. He's like, y'all really had
Oh,
fun with this one. And I was like, we really did. We didn't finish everything. Everything wasn't perfect, but then we were right behind Charles and Jennifer. So I just knew like no matter what, we weren't going home anyway because
yeah.
Charles and Jennifer did so poorly. And I hate that for them because they are both so good at cooking. But man, they just couldn't get it together.
And maybe they were having their little,
I think so.
exhaustion moment and just kind of, yeah.
I think so. Charles even said he's like, he blacked out. He's not used to getting yelled at in a pressure situation like that. And I totally can understand.
Yeah, I think that's another constant across all shows is, well, maybe not Chopped or, the ones you only do for one day, but these
Yeah.
bigger shows, everybody has that moment of just exhaustion and like you said, either I want to win or I want to go home. And
Right.
you're just kind of you're at a breaking point. So I'm so glad that you brought that up as well because I can see it, but I think I can see it because I've
Because you already did
been
it.
where you've been, right?
And I mean, it's so obvious. It's so obvious when people are getting to that point because it shows in their performance. Because I mean, it happens to all of us. And the further you go, the more often it happens for sure. And the longer we're there, the more everyone kind of notices. And I remember there was a moment where the producers came and talked to us and they were like, we know that you guys are going through a lot. I mean, this is a lot. And so they kind of start accommodating a little better and everything like that. So
That's
yeah,
nice.
it's a lot.
Did you guys get days off in between filming, or was it just go, 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 get it all done?
We got days off because Gordon would have to have days off, and he would go, and we'd be on our phones every now and then. They didn't let us have our phones often, but we would have our phones and we'd be on Instagram, and we see that he's in DC opening Hell's Kitchen, and so
Yeah,
we're like, okay, he has a. That's why we have a day off. But then we go. They take us to the beach or get manicures and pedicures, picnics in the park and stuff like that. So they gave us things to do.
that's really nice. And that you guys kind of did it together. So
Hmm.
you guys were kind of becoming, a team, so to
We
speak.
really were. We really were, and just good friends, really good friends.
I love to hear that.
Again.
My next question was for patio grilling challenge. Do you want to skip that one and jump straight to the wall, or do you have some fun stories about the patio grilling challenge?
During the patio challenge, it was just fun because Reagan and Bryn had the front row seat, and you could just hear them talking about everybody, and they were so funny. That's pretty much it. I mean, except for I think I should have won that challenge, but other than that, we won't go there because also the fish challenge, I thought I should have won too, but we won't go there either. So I'm gonna just let
Yeah,
that ride.
and I'm sorry I skipped over that one, but even though you didn't win the fish challenge, you were in the top three, and that was three times in a row. What did that feel like to be in the top three times in a row? Was it very invigorating? Was it frustrating because you're like, damn, I want to be winning more? What was that like?
It was both cool and also just kind of like I wish I could have won those because in my mind, there's even in the show you can see Kennedy saying you got this one because in the fish challenge because I really thought I did. I mean, I had been doing consistently well, and so I was like, I'm on my way to winning this thing. But you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, that was a really fun one to watch. I definitely want to get Reagan on because I want to talk to her about her fish
yeah,
allergies, and she seems so fearless in that moment. I'm
yeah,
just
Reagan is so funny. She's like my big sister. We have the best time. She always just gives me a hard time, and I'm always giving her a hard time in the best way. Like we are really like siblings.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, then we get to the wall, and that one seemed to have gotten the better of you. The first thing I wanted to ask was, were you experiencing that fatigue again? Were you just kind of exhausted again, or was it just a really hard challenge for you?
I wasn't really fatigued in that challenge. It was just a really hard challenge. I think that we were coming up on I was like, okay, this is one of those challenges where if I can get through it, then I can make it to the finale and then we'll readjust from there. It just was so difficult. I think it's one of the hardest challenges in MasterChef. And I went back and watched some of the older seasons that when I think they started it in season like 11, I think. And it always sends some people home that really were doing well or you could have seen in the finale. And so it was one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do.
Yeah, that one would have been hard for me. I don't have the best hearing. Yeah, definitely glad I didn't have any challenges like that in on my end.
It's so tough to do a challenge like that too because it doesn't really have anything to do with cooking. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was tough, and I still think back on it, and I just don't know how we could have even done better. So that's a tough
Well,
one.
you had gone so far, and before we talk about elimination, I have to reiterate what I say to everyone. This is no shade on winners. You guys are great, but I have found more and more that the people who don't win are the people whose careers just explode after the
Yeah,
show
I've
is
noticed that
done.
too. I've noticed that too, and I'm not sure how that correlates. And I felt like the biggest. I will get to that, I guess, but I felt like I failed so badly when I got sent home. But it was so tough.
Well, let's just jump into that then. If you feel comfortable being vulnerable, but tell me about the elimination.
Yeah, I think I just had a really hard time with it because it was such a moment of it was a moment of I had been doing so well and then to go home and it kind of be my fault. It just made me feel like everyone's gonna see it as Kobe's not a great cook. Kobe messed up. Kobe sent Bryn home, who possibly could have been in the finale too. And I just felt like I failed because I had my grandpa come in on my audition and this was for him. I really was being pushed because of him. I just knew that he was going to be so proud of me once I won, once the confetti went up and they said my name and I just felt so bad and I felt sad and I just cried and I couldn't I think it was an overwhelming feeling of like I'm relieved also because it's over. I'm no longer stressing about this, but it's also just a sad moment where it's like I failed and I
Yeah.
didn't win. And I came on this show, and I put my heart into it. And there were just times where I felt like there was no ending and there was no, I don't know, it just was a hard thing to get over. And it was a hard thing to go through at the time. And I still get choked up about it because then I get home and I lost my grandpa and it was just such a emotional year for me because then I lost my grandpa and then the show airs. So I'm excited, but I'm also mourning and then I have to watch him on my audition and it was an overwhelming year for me. I still have trouble just kind of even talking about it or even I don't know. It was a hard year. It was the hardest and most exciting year of my life. It's such a mind game in my head because I was like, should I be proud of myself? Should I not be proud of myself? Some people, and when I talk to other people, they're like, Kobe, we look at it as such an accomplishment, you just even being on the show. And for me, it's like, I don't look at it that way. I look at it like I didn't win But now I'm starting to come into it because it's like one of my favorite people from the show did win and he deserved it. And then Jennifer and Kennedy were both in the finale. I got to watch people that I grew with, people that really made me feel welcome and have a sense of family outside of my family. And I got to see them compete and really cheer them on. And I was really rooting for all of them. So whoever would have won would have been great for me. And me and Grant are like such good friends. I love Grant. Me and him had so many one-on-ones off camera in our little lounge area, we called it. So it's just a mix of feelings of just sad and proud and upset, but happy. So it's just you get all of that in my elimination. I think you can see it
Yeah, and I get it. And thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing that
for
with all
sure.
of us. To try to turn it into a little bit of a positive, you said that you, and I just got chills again. You said that you felt like you found a place where you belonged. Now, I kind of had a moment like that, and so I want to ask you, can you explain a little bit more to for the listeners,
Yeah,
and for the
for
people who
sure.
watch the show?
Sure. It's an amazing feeling when you can be around people who are have the same interests as you and you can talk about food and you can talk about the competition and you can talk about how you find a sense of purpose in MasterChef Kitchen. You really do because I found that I love this. I really love to cook. I really love food. I really love to compete and I found a place where you can put it all into one, you may, and I gained a family out of it. I really think of those, a lot of them as family because I mean, during the show, The South, we got together and we did dinners and me and Kennedy got really close and me and Sarah, we are the best of friends. She came out to Houston for my birthday. I'm flying out for her grandma's birthday in a month and we talk on the phone almost every day. We text and me and her really got super close because we just it's just so fun to find some people that you love in an environment that is so hectic and so stressful. And we all called it just like trauma bonding. We all got so close because of this shared trauma that we all went through. I mean, it just felt like I belonged there. It felt like I found family, I found passion, I found purpose all in one place of stress and competition and happiness and you wanting to do well, but you also want your competitors to do well because they feel like family. You don't want them to go home, but obviously you want to do better. But it's just such a complex feeling. Overall, I think it becomes one of those moments where you really find where you're supposed to be. And even Gordon, he felt like somebody he was always giving us moments of just like inspiration. And so did Joe and so did Aaron. And I think Joe is really underappreciated on the show because he is very harsh, but he's also very genuine. He gives you genuine compliments. He gives you genuine criticism. So you just kind of find like mentors and family and it's overall just great, I think.
Well, and I think that's what you really won out of this.
Right.
You found a family, you found a place you belonged. And I just I look at you and I see a winner. So,
Thank
if
you so
I doubt
much.
you need yet another person telling you that, but like you're
No, I mean
amazing.
it is nice to hear because I'm starting to feel that way. I'm starting to feel that way a year later that this was something that made me a better person.
Yeah, I think it's so great. And I think the further away you get from it, you're gonna see that being on the show and making the friends was
Right.
winning,
Right.
So but then again, 10 years after my thing, I have a whole lot to say about it that I sure as hell wouldn't have been saying a year after it.
Yeah,
So
no, if you would have caught me a couple of months after, I might not have been so. And I just did a
yeah.
podcast interview with Derek from one of the seasons, and we kind of shared a very similar experience where he went home on the wall challenge and he was doing really well too. So, and we both, and him being on MasterChef, it's like he knows
Yeah.
the stuff that was going on. So,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that I love that so many people from MasterChef, depending, even not even in the same season, but it becomes a whole family.
I believe
To
so.
speak to that, are you watching the new season now, the millennium, the age version one? What are
Generation,
they
I
calling
think
it?
it's
Yeah, the generation
Generations.
one.
I am watching. I'm watching also because my mom has a coworker and friend that she told. about, because when I was going through my MasterChef journey, he was very interested in it. And my mom told him, you should really try it out. And he did. And now he's on the show. Warren, Uncle Warren on the show. He is competing. So I'm watching, kind of rooting for him. And I saw a guy on there from, I want to say the millennials. His name was Cy. And he had a very, I guess, similar story to me. His dad kind of inspired him to cook, and then his dad passed away. So I kind of felt for him. And so I'm kind of rooting for him too.
Nice, nice. Well, it's good to hear who you're, rooting for. And if Uncle Warren wants to come on the show, I'd love to have him on once he's allowed to, of course.
He's super fun.
So just a couple more questions, and then I
Okay.
want to give you lots of time to be able to plug, what you're doing now and all of that. But a question I have forgotten to ask a few of the other MasterChef contestants, do you get to keep your apron?
You don't get to take it with you, but they will send it to you when the show's over. They actually sent me my chef coat too, because I was only one episode away from getting it. So they sent me my chef coat, and they sent me my apron too, because they fit us for them. They fit us for them. I want to say a couple, maybe like what I went home on. They fitted us for them when we did the patio challenge, and so they ended up sending me mine still. So I got all of it, and I'm gonna put them in a shadow box and hang them up in my office.
Nice, nice. And what are you doing now? Where can people try your food? Let's just plug yourself as much as you want. I want to know where we can eat your food, see your food, and support you more.
Yeah, so I do a lot of my recipes online on TikTok at Chef Kolby Kash, also on Instagram at Chef Kolby Kash. I have my own seasoning line called Bayou City Seasonings that you can get through my website or just at bayoucityseasonings.com. I put all my recipes for free on my website at www.kolbycash.com. And finally, we are working on a food truck that should be open, and it's gonna take a while. Maybe next year we're gonna be doing Creole food, mostly po' boys, and then we'll have beignets on the menu along with some boudin balls and things like that. So food truck coming soon. All my recipes are on my website, and if you want video recipes, you can see them on my Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. Oh, I cannot wait for that food truck. I'm gonna have to come out. I grew up, part of
Yes.
my childhood was in New Orleans, so it sounds amazing to me. Um,
But yeah, I'm very excited about the food truck. It's gonna be something that's just I'm super passionate about. Creole food is kind of how I grew up, and Southern. We're kind of mixing the fusion of Southern and Creole. I call it Tex Creole. So
that sounds amazing. That sounds so
it's gonna
great.
be
Well,
great.
Colby, it sounds like you're so busy. I can't thank you enough for making time
Of
to come on
course.
the podcast and share with us, and be vulnerable with us. That was just so touching. Thank you so, so much for
Well,
coming
thank
on.
you. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's so nice to meet you and talk with you.
Oh, you too, you too. Everyone, please make sure to check out Colby on Instagram, TikTok, and check out his website. I will make sure to put everything in the show notes below. And Colby, once that truck comes out, please let me know so I can put that
I will.
information in there too, and maybe
I
even have
sure
you come
will.
back.
Thank you so much. I definitely will. Anytime you need me back, I'm happy to come.
Oh, I would love to. Well, thank you to everyone who listened and watched the Who's Reality Cooking podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode. Bye.